who gets the most targets during the season before Brandon Aiyuk is ready to play? And I was thinking about the one season where Jimmy and George were just in sync, and George was having a wide receiver one kind of season. And last year he bounced back to a tremendous season as well. And then I also started to think about Christian McCaffrey. Word out of the mini camp was that McCaffrey looked great. Maybe not the same as he was in 2023, where he was so good in mini camp, where everyone was predicting that he was just going to have a gigantic season, which he did. And I'm looking at both of those guys and thinking, like, those are probably our best bets. Probably Kittle more so than McCaffrey, just because targets out of the backfield just seem to be a little bit less. But then I started to look at the wide receiver room, and Juwan Jennings is probably your best bet, though you do have Pretty Ricky, who we hope has a solid sophomore season. They have some other receivers, though I believe Demarcus Robinson is going to miss the beginning of the season. There's a Jordan Watkins rookie who's kind of getting written up a little bit. So where do you sit with this as far as who you expect to get the most targets before Brandon Aiyuk is ready to return, which we believe is probably going to be post second half of the season?
That is so crazy that you landed on the exact spot where I landed. Is I just think that George is the most explosive playmaker in the receiving aspect of things, not including Christian in this. So I think I was thinking exactly that 2019 all over again, and George is the most targeted player, especially if Luke Farrell can take over babysitting duties over there with McKivitz on the right side, which is really, if we talk about what has been the most impactful thing um, in terms of George and his production as a receiver, it's been just him having to stay in and block so much. That has really curtailed over the past, I would say, 3 years, has really curtailed the number of routes he's run, just as a pass blocker. So if Farrell can do anything to take some of that off his plate, I think George would be my guy. I just think, just overall, I think he lines up even once Ayuk gets back to having kind of a monster season again, because he was really really good last year when he wasn't injured, of course.
I'm with you, but I kind of wonder, like, if I'm thinking, if I'm a team playing the 49ers early in the season, I'm circling Kittle as well. So it's not like this is going to be by surprise, right? They're not going to sneak up on teams, because I think people are circling Kittle as well. And what you said about Farrell is what I was thinking about too, which is if Farrell can come in and maybe George gets split out, and he's they're not really running a two tight end set, though they may disguise it that way, and you get
Hmm.
George out in the open a little bit more, and Farrell can help with the blocking. That will definitely help them, especially early on. And I do kind of wonder if just the presence of McCaffrey, knowing that they got to keep an eye on that guy, just opens so many more things up. Because last year, we're watching this team, and just guys could not shake free to save their lives. And some of that is, Brock's not the best deep throwing guy, but in the previous years, he had better success, it seemed. And he will attempt it too. We know Brock is
Hmm.
willing to attempt it, but just the mystery of Christian, I do wonder if that helps open them up a little bit more downfield. So you may see Pretty Ricky sneak open. You may see someone who, like, we really like as a player, but just hasn't gotten the opportunity. Jacob Cowing, like, that's the one where I kind of circle and I go, man, if they could get anything from this dude, if he could do some of the Debo stuff, even though they're completely different receivers, that would be so helpful. And I wonder if just the presence of Christian opens things up a little bit more for them.
I think so, because he is not, you think about running backs and check down, but Christian will attack the intermediate area in a way that, because I've said it several times on this podcast. I think he can play the slot. He's such a good receiver that it's not out of the question that he can do that. And that's the other thing about George is, as we saw tonight, we haven't seen it much since then. But that was the cool thing about him in 19 was that he could play all three wide receiver positions. He could be the Y, he could be the X, and he could play in the slot. So I agree with you that if I was looking to game plan against the 49ers, that's where I start is with George. But it's not like he's just going to be in one spot. Kyle can use him. We've seen how Kyle does it. He can line him up in the backfield, kind of like the Chiefs use Kelsey in that
Hmm.
he is there he is there's no one place that he's gonna be. So even if you're trying to target him, it ends up being like a chess match because Reed, you're trying to key on him, and Reed is trying to move him around the formation so you can't get a beat on him. So it's like cat and mouse. And then what I like about thinking about George as the wide receiver one in air quotes is that it sort of puts everybody in their proper place because I think especially we saw the second half of the season. I've been having these conversations about Jawan Jennings and $20 million. It's just crazy. What are we doing? He is not a wide receiver one, and we saw that the second half of the season. We saw that was great. You know, BA gets hurt. He has the 175 against the Rams, and then after that, he had a couple good games, but he had a bunch of duds too. He's not a wide receiver one. And if you can use George in that role, then it puts him at a wide receiver two, which is more comfortable
Hmm.
probably. And then you get Purcell in the slot. Everybody's more in their proper place if you can get George to play um, that X role. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Is just that is it gives them a little bit more flexibility. And like you say, if you're coming out in 21 personnel with two tight ends, I mean, okay, technically, but George is like more of a wild card or a joker, is Sean Payton calls it. He's not, your average tight end. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how they're able to deploy him. But I'm betting on George. I'm literally betting on George to have a big season this year. And especially while BA is out.
So,
You also agree that it's not going to be, but they'll put him on the pup, so he'll be eligible after 4 weeks. I don't think it'll be 4 weeks. I think it'll be closer to 8. I have no idea, and I'm a doctor. I just play one on a podcast, but I don't
and
think
look, if
it'll be
that
4 weeks.
injury wasn't as brutal as it was after we learned everything that happened, then maybe after 4 weeks you're like, okay. But I think what we learned is that injury was ridiculously brutal, and you don't want to rush
Mhm.
the guy back because if you expect, and we'll get to this in our bonus question, if you expect to be there in the end, you don't want to take any risks with Brandon Aiyuk
Mhm.
re-injuring himself early.
I mean, when if we're to believe him, which I don't know why he would lie, that in March he was still on painkillers and on the couch. So I mean, yeah, to think that now, what is that? April, May, June, July, August. So that 5 months from being on the couch, still, in enough pain that he's on painkillers to think that, 5 weeks or 6 months, 5 months, and he'll be back out there. I don't know and to your point, the point you just made. Why would you have an accelerated timetable for him? If I think you're right. I think if I were them, I'd be playing a long game. I wouldn't be trying to just rush him back out. Kind of like what they did with Christian last year, in that you know you you try to extend it out as long as possible rather than rushing him back out there. Because
Right.
you've just seen so many examples of how rushing them back can do more harm than good.